Happy Thursday! Come on in, pull up a chair because the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer back here once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com. Kind of crazy day so far today. So it is Thursday, January 3rd, 2019. I have to keep remembering that 19 because I know I'm going to mess up. I know at some point I'm going to put something out there and say, oh, yes, blah, blah, blah is coming in March of 2018. It'll be like, hey, goofball. So, anyway, so no news today. I was originally going to do my 5 most anticipated role-playing games for 2019, at least my 5 top anticipated role-playing games. Then when I did a little bit of research, some of them don't even have any images that are floating around, and some of the info is a little either stale or kind of weak. So what I've done is I've actually reached out to a couple of companies because I wanted to see if maybe they had some images they would like me to share, or a little more information I could share about these upcoming role-playing games. So I'm a big role-playing game fan, and we do talk role-playing games on Thursdays. So I do want to point out today I'm actually taking a first look at 3 different Torg Eternity products. I've got the Living Land sourcebook, so that's first up. Then we've got the Delphi Missions for Living Land, and then we've got the Game Master screen. So I am going to be cracking these open. We're going to page through all of them. Well, we don't really page through a Game Master screen, but we're going to do that in just a few moments. I have been playing around with the lighting a little bit in here again. I don't know. I got the lighting that I like on the table now with the camera shooting straight down, but I don't know. I'm not too keen on... There's too much shadow here. Just a little too much shadow, and I have to kind of do some stuff to even out the lighting and make sure things are backlit, that I'm not necessarily always throwing shadows against this stuff, right? When I'm just sitting here. So if you ever shoot video in some place that has absolutely no natural light, then you know there's certain ways that you have to angle lights at yourself to properly light you. But for some reason, I'm getting a little bit of shadow here, and it's from the backlight up here. So if I just, sit like this, then I'm fine, right? I guess I could talk to you guys like this, huh? Also want to point out, I'm a little scruffy today. Sorry about that. Did not have an opportunity to shave. I've been running around all day long. So anyway, first off, before I jump into the unboxing, well, it's not really unboxing. I guess it's unwrapping the page throughs. I do want to say, hey, welcome aboard. This is a live show. If you have not stopped by in the past to check out the Daily Dope before, this is episode 222 of the show, so that's pretty wild. I got a couple of windows open here that I need to close and a window I need to open up. All right, so this is a live stream, so if you are watching live, you want to say hello, there is chat available through YouTube. If you want to say howdy, or maybe you have a question, or maybe there's something about the Living Land books and GM screen that we'll be taking a peek at, you want to get a closer look at or have a question about, by all means, chime in and I will respond. Do want to point out, chat is not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay. But I do follow it. I do pay attention to it. So if you say hi or chime in, I will respond. Pretty cool. All right. So what's cooking for tomorrow and on next week's shows? I want to share that with you. Tomorrow, I'm going to unbox and take a first look at, and this box is actually pretty heavy. Shadow Rift. It is a heroic adventure game It is a like a fantasy deck builder, and I know there's a Kickstarter. I think there's maybe a few days left on it. There is a Kickstarter going on for an expansion to Shadow Rift. I believe it's still going on maybe for a week or so. I'm going to take a peek at this, crack this open. It is for 1 to 6 players, though cool that there's some solitaire rules in here. And it plays up to 6 players. So this is from Starling Games, although there is no indication on this box what company this is from. And I believe this has been out for a little bit. It's been out for a year or two, maybe. So that is on tomorrow's show. On Monday's show, I will be unboxing and taking a first look at Paper Tales from my pals over at Stronghold Games. This was a game that really had piqued my interest when I first saw it at Origins, or at least saw a preview of it at Origins. Once again, another fantasy game. It's a card game. One of the things that I think is kind of cool is that it's kind of a bit of an engine building game, but some of your units will age and then they're gone. So pretty cool. I thought that was kind of unique, so we're going to be taking a peek at that. On Tuesday's show, I will be reviewing Nemo's War from Victory Point Games, the 2nd edition of Nemo's War. I don't have it down here right now. I've actually got it set up in my bedroom. I was playing. Hey, you know, you take the space where you can get it, right? Jeez, come on. And I'm not going to sit down here in the cold and dry and lonely duct tape studios all the time. No, I'm kidding. It's not lonely. Usually the cats are down here, but they're sleeping. They're upstairs tonight, snoozing away, which is okay, because then that way we don't have to listen to Pinky caterwauling. So, anywho, so on Tuesday's show, I will be reviewing Nemo's War from Victory Point Games. On Wednesday's show, we're going to unbox and take a first look at The Dark Sands, the War in North Africa, 1940 to 1942, from GMT Games. Wednesdays is War Game Wednesdays. So I will be taking a look at this. This is kind of looks to me like more of a traditional kind of hex and counter sort of war game. It is designed by Ted Racier, and he does some different wrinkles in that. It's not as if he's you know, who do I want to kind of pick on? Who does I won't do it. You know, there are a few game designers out there. They usually do stuff for decision games that it's just the same old shit from the 1970s, just rehashed over and over and over again. No, that will not be this. I guarantee that. But this is kind of lighter. I can tell that it's got a paper map. So pretty cool. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that. I always dug the Africa campaign in World War II. And Desert Fox, love that movie. Love that movie. James Mason, very good. And then on Friday's show, or I should say on Thursday's show next week, I haven't finished reading Coriolis yet from Free League Publishing. I'm going to try to see if I can get a review of that in, or I might do a review of maybe a PDF product, because there have been some PDFs I've been looking through. You know, I'd really like to start doing more reviews for like adventures and things like that, as opposed to only just core books most of the time. So, so if I can get it finished up, I will review Coriolis. Pretty cool so far. Like, I dig the art. The artwork's kind of cool. And actually, I got to be honest, the setting is pretty unique. Then on Friday's show, I will be cracking open and taking a look at Master of Wills. I know absolutely nothing about this game. It is from Stormcrest Games, who I want to say is part of the Game Salute umbrella. So it is it's a game of like warring factions. It's a competitive 2 to 4 player game that pits 2 factions against each other. So I guess 2 of the players are on one side, 2 of the players are on the other side. So it's about the balance of power. Looks like it's got a bit of a science fiction flavor to it, or maybe even kind of a cyberpunkish vibe to it. So that'll be pretty cool. Take a peek at that. So that's what's cooking. on tomorrow's show, as well as shows next week. One last thing I wanted to talk about. I have gotten a couple of emails from folks, and they have asked, what is it about old school, or I guess I'll say OSR games that I like? Because I have kind of mentioned old school, revival, Renaissance, whatever you want to have that R stand for. Personally, I've always thought it was old school Renaissance, but that's just me. But I've had people ask, hey, Jeff, what is it about these old school retro clones and things like that that you really dig? I've heard you comment about it and kind of talk a little bit about trying to get my nephew and his friends, and even my best friend Elliot Miller is part of the campaign with the gang, kind of introducing them to an old school vibe, as opposed to, say, today's Pathfinder or 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, or a lot of different games, right? So I'm not going to go through a whole, spiel about what is the difference between, OSR and today and things like that. But one of the cool things that I always like about the old school Renaissance is that it focuses more on, your game is supposed to focus more on player skill than on skills on the character sheet. So I'll give you a great example, and I've always been like this. Now, if you take a look at, say, Call of Cthulhu, which I'm not saying that's an OSR game, although it's old enough to be OSR. If you take a look at that, there's different debate, fast talk. There's different kind of persuasion skills, right, that involve talking. And these days, I'm not saying every player's like this, but I mean, these days in the newer Pathfinders / 5th edition, you've got a persuasion skill, and people are like, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to roll on my persuasion skill. And they don't even try to come up with what they're saying, because it's like, oh, well, that's the skill that's on the sheet. Whereas old school OSR, you would have to come up with something to tell your game master, your dungeon master, your keeper, what have you. And they would normally use that to maybe give you a modifier or possibly a penalty when you were trying to, if you even had to roll dice. Old school is more rulings than rules. So if you pitch your game master, pretty good line of BS for the NPCs or what have you, the monsters or whatever you're, talking with, they might just say, all right, we're not even rolling dice. That's good stuff. Other thing I dig about it too is it's not everything is a set piece. Not everything is a, just everything's combat. I gotta admit, and I have said this before, and people look at me and they kind of scratch their heads, but I have said on multiple occasions, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is very old school. People don't believe that, but it is. It veers old school pretty well. Much more so than 3, 3.5, or 4 ever did. Oh my gosh, way more than 4. But that said, there is still a lot of stuff where it's like, you read an adventure nowadays and it's 200 pages. And, back in the day when I was younger, when I first got into D&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, right? We're looking late 70s. I think it was 78, 79 when I bought my first TSR product, which was G1, not even knowing that I needed these books. I thought the module was it, right? What do you want? I was like, I don't know, 11, 12 years old when I got it. But there's just, it's just like, it's almost like they're being paid by the word, right? So there's a lot of stuff in newer adventures and stuff, a lot of background, a lot of backstory and things like that. The game master doesn't really need. The game master doesn't really need that, because the whole point, at least in my opinion, when you're creating in a fantasy role-playing game, right? We're not talking like Call of Cthulhu, which is supposed to be set in the real world. We're talking a fantasy setting, or even science fiction, whatever. I like to be able to have things like being made up on the fly between the game master and the players, creating the background, little backstories, little history, things like that. Um, and if everything's like set pieces and plotted out and things like that, then it's kind of a railroad. Now, in a horror game, I apologize, but I think you have to railroad players in a horror game, because otherwise you're not going to get the spooks, the scares, and the game's just going to come right, right off the rails. No pun intended on that, right? But whereas like in science fiction or fantasy or even like post-apocalyptic, even if you're doing like science fantasy, having a little bit of leeway where you and the players can kind of create a backstory, a history, to me is pretty cool. Does it matter that in this room that this pool was originally created to hold salmon, but 30 years ago it dried out, and of course the salmon are dead. All you got left are like bones from the fishes. No, all you need to know is there's an empty pool with fish bones in it. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know the history of that particular room. So I find that I like the old school vibe. Now, I'm not saying new school's bad. I just like the old school vibe, and I like doing more of the show don't tell. Show the player, paint the picture in their mind, let them come to their own conclusions about why things are what they are. Another thing that's also very cool about old school, especially if we're talking fantasy, there's kind of that sense of wonder as well. There's a sense of wonder to magic items, monsters. It's not that difficult to create like new monsters to throw at players in that, and which is a blast, because if your players have been playing fantasy role-playing games for a long time, an ogre is an ogre, a troll is a troll, right? I mean, granted, different systems have different special abilities for the different monsters in that, but all in all, an orc is kind of an orc, right? A goblin is a goblin, a kobold's a kobold. When you start running into like old school where it's like, well, why is it like this walking eyeball on chicken legs? What does that do? Or should we be afraid of it? I mean, should we talk to it? What's going on? So that's the other thing that I really dig about the old school Renaissance. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm going to dive into some Torg Eternity Living Land products here, and we are going to switch on over to the other camera. Do want to point out, you can swing on over to ulysses-us.com to order products from not only just Torg. You've got the Dark Eye, you've got I'm blanking on it, Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory, and coming soon to Kickstarter will be Fading Suns, a new edition of Fading Suns, which looks pretty interesting. Do want to also mention a lot of the Ulisses North America products are available on DriveThruRPG in digital PDF format, and of course the Daily Dope, thus thegaminggang.com, is an affiliate of the DriveThru sites. So if you are going to go over to DriveThruRPG or Wargame Vault or DriveThru Comics, Fiction, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners, and that way if you do make a purchase, I receive a very small portion of that, and all those little portions add up and really do help keep the Gaming Gang around. All right, let's hop on over to the other camera here. Okay, so if you did not catch the show yesterday, I did point out that I swapped out cameras. So I believe we're getting a sharper picture for the games and stuff that I'm going to be taking a look at. So it looks, to me at least, to my eye, it looks a bit sharper. So if you are watching like on a large screen and you go full screen, this should be pretty decent. As far as my mug, when it's just me taking up the screen, not a lot I can do about that. I only have so many different capture devices I can utilize. So All right, so I am going to pop on my reading specs. So we're going to first take a look at the Living Land, the source book. I'm going to put this stuff down here. So as you can see, I have not taken a peek at this yet. And you know what? I am going to grab a quick sip here because, as I mentioned, it's pretty dry down here. It's always dry. Always kind of dry and dusty. Good deal. All right. So, let's flip this on over. So, first thing we can tell is we got the usual really sweet Ulysses production quality. We got our little bookmark again. So, a realm of primitive adventure. The Living Land is ruled by High Lord Baraka and his army of reptilian Edinos. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm almost positive it's pronounced Edinos. It has taken over both coasts of the United States, the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and the mysterious White Zone in Canada, where the Living Land rules. Miraculous spiritual power is available, but technology rusts and fails. Ordinary humans and even some heroes regress and become ruled by their primal passions. There are amazing opportunities scattered among the Living Land's perils. The law of wonders ensures that lost treasures appear in the misty and unexplored jungles. These treasures might have disappeared from Earth long ago, or they may be relics from cosms destroyed by the High Lords. Whatever their different origins, they are resurfacing here and now for adventurers bold enough to discover them. So we're going to find new perks, miracles, and gear, new threats, foes, and plenty of dinosaurs. Details of the different regions of the Living Land, plot hooks and events from the first year of the Possibility Wars. And it does point out that you do need the core rules and the drama deck to play this. So if you are not familiar with Torg, or I should say now, Torg Eternity. Torg originally came out, I want to say 90s, early, like maybe 93-ish. Sole premise, and Torg Eternity is the new edition of Torg, which I do believe came out in about 2016. I think that's when Torg Eternity hit for Ulisses North America. But the whole premise is that these different cosms, these different realities invade Earth. And each of the cosms are led by some diabolical villain type. And each of the cosms is kind of a completely different sort of setting. So, as an example, like the Living Land, that setting is more kind of prehistoric, kind of land of the lost-ish sort of setting. And it's pretty cool. It is actually, from my understanding, the Living Land has been one of the more popular of the cosms over the years, or even in original Torg, although they kind of dropped the ball a little bit, and then they kind of made it a little more comedic, which I understand is not going to happen with Ulisses North America. So I have done some interviews regarding Torg itself. In fact, I talked to Daryl Hayhurst last month because Ulisses North America had the Nile Empire, which is another cosm for Torg Eternity. So there's a little bit of background for you about Torg. So we've got Living Land, which is, as I mentioned, kind of this prehistoric vibe to it. There's the Nile Empire, as I mentioned. I don't think that Kickstarter is still going on. I think the Kickstarter did end. Or maybe if it's still going, it's maybe got a few days left. That's it. But that's sort of a pulp superhero-ish, but not super powered, right? So pulp heroes are a bit different than, say, like superheroes, like, Marvel or DC. But you're looking at, there's kind of an Egyptian motif, very, very unusual. We also have some of these I'm not even positive about the pronunciation. We've got one where it's a demon cosm, and that's taken over much of Russia. We've got another which is kind of like a horror cosm, And that is, I believe, a lot of. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think, if I remember correctly, I think the horror cosm is sort of like India. There's one that's kind of a fantasy, a standard fantasy. That's Isle. I believe Isle is the next Kickstarter they're going to be doing. So these items are shipping out right now to Kickstarter backers. There are some other items that I did not receive that I'm not sure if they're not available yet, or they only have them available for Kickstarter backers at the moment. One of them is the kind of campaign adventure, the God Box. So I do want to point out, if you are a player, you're probably not going to want to watch this entire video, simply because we are going to be looking at an adventure book, and I'm sure there is a GM section in here as well. So just going to take a quick peek through. So we got Welcome to the Living Land, the Near Now. One of the other things I'll mention is that it looks as if the focus for the Cosm books that are going to be coming out are going to be the first year of the Possibility War. So one of the things that I kind of get a kick out of, because I am relatively familiar with old Torg, the old West End Games Torg that came out in the 90s, is they had this big like meta plot, and that was like one of the big selling points of the game, was this big meta plot that each new release would kind of advance along. One of the unfortunate aspects of that meta plot, though, was a lot of the really cool, exciting stuff was being done by these like NPC heroes. So it kind of took, if you ran it as as it was presented, kind of made your own player characters, your own Storm Knight characters, kind of play second fiddle, which that's never all that exciting. So we've got talking about the response to the invasion by the Living Land Cosm. So what happens is when these Cosms invade, their own reality overtakes our own. So that's why, like New York, Chicago, I think it's into Detroit as well. You've got these areas that are just cities that are just falling into ruin because modern technology, modern devices, things like that, decay rapidly. In fact, everything decays rapidly in the Living Land. Even like bodies, bodies will sit there and just basically disappear. They'll decompose very, very quickly. So we're seeing for if you're going to have player characters who have been transformed, Storm Knights who have been transformed, or even have Storm Knights who are Indinos, the reptile people who there are various different tribes of. Some tribes are all about taking over the earth and draining the earth of its possibility energy. And others are not too keen on the fact that they're trying to subjugate yet another world. So you can have some Indinos who are actually on the side of the humans. And you have, of course, some humans who are on the side of the bad guys. So, okay, so we got miracles, because this is a kind of a primitive sort of cosm, sort of reality. There are miracles that can take place. One of the aspects about this cosm I think is pretty cool are also the wonders, because this particular cosm has taken over all these other worlds in the past. So you can see some of their wonders, some things from other realities, other worlds actually pop up in the Living Land. So you can pretty much go gonzo, and that's one of the reasons why I dig Torg Eternity, is it's got a real gonzo flavor to it. When you're playing this, you should be playing everything where it's, I'm not necessarily saying over the top, but very dramatic, very action-packed. Personally, that's kind of how I like a lot of my role-playing games, outside of if it's horror. If it's horror, I like a nice slow burn, and then suddenly, ah, what? Oh my God, I didn't see that coming. But I even tell my players when they're first being introduced to role-playing games, I always start to say that, hey, you know what? Look at it this way. Look at it as if we're creating a movie that has an unlimited budget, and we can do anything we want with special effects. We could cast the biggest stars we want. And I'm like, you go to the movies, you don't see a bunch of downtime. When you're going to see, say, like an action movie or science fiction movie or what have you, you don't usually see a lot of filler. You might have scenes that advance the plot, but you don't have scenes where it's like, well, trying to remember, was the color of that bag red or black? Well, wait. All right, everybody, let's stop all play for 5 minutes while we try to remember, was the color of that bag red or black? And that bag has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing. Yeah, I've had things like that kind of start derailing stuff, and I'm like, wait a second, hang on, remember, this is an action-packed movie. All right, so we got some beasts and vehicles. Got some pretty cool artwork so far. One of the things that I have found, and I mean, this is just my opinion. It doesn't really count for anything for a lot of people. Sometimes I find some of the artwork from Ulysses to be a little flat, and when I say that, I just mean kind of. I mean, the artwork's good. It just doesn't necessarily tend to be really inspiring sometimes. And I do know in some of the Torg stuff, especially, that's where I'm kind of talking about this, is you can tell that they've got like this set of heroes that they're kind of featuring in the artwork, but it's sort of like sometimes it's not very exciting artwork. All right, so now we're getting into, this is the Game Masters section here. So we got the war zones, so we're talking about the East Coast. Now, there are parts of New York that are actually still holding out from the chasm overtaking everything. And there are rules about the invaders actually increasing and branching out and furthering the takeover of various areas. So we're talking about New York. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we're talking Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. Philadelphia is like a free area. Gettysburg, Arkansas, Atlanta, Miami, the Gulf, Mexico, and Yucatan. We go into the Midwest. City of Chicago, which, I'm sorry, I would kind of switch it up and have Chicago still like a holdout. That's just me, but in the actual setting, it's Chicago is unrecognizable now, right? So it has fallen under the spell of the Living Land reality. All right, so we're talking about various different areas, then parts of the West Coast. Oh, here we go. Aurora. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. That is like the horror chasm. And of course, in the core rulebook and in the first Delphi Missions adventure book, each of the chasms, they go into detail about them. But of course, the source book is really where, now you're going to delve in really deeply into these various different chasms. So that once all the chasms have been addressed in source books, then they'll be able to kind of move on with the big meta story of the Possibility War and move out of that first year, because then you'll have your source books where all you're going to be doing is building on events that take place afterwards. So we've got the different axioms. So this is one of the aspects of Torg Eternity, is the higher the axiom, the better it is for whatever. So you've got magic, social, spirit, and tech. So in the Living Land, and there's various kind of levels of how much that reality is taken over. But as far as these axioms, so for an example, magic magic really doesn't work. Magic, it's very difficult for magic to work in the living land. Now, remember, we were talking about miracles. Miracles are a little different. Miracles are not magic. Social. So what social is telling us is there are certain social levels. So in the living land, there's really no concept of government. There's no real concept of like economy. The largest group is more like the tribe, the family. Spirit is very high. So the spirit they're talking about, where that's, you know, where we're talking about the miracles, things like that. And then tech 6 is pretty low, and that basically means that most modern technical items are not going to work. That's why cars don't work, like cars start rusting out right away. Now, one of the aspects of the Storm Knights is that Storm Knights can overcome a cosm's reality. Storm Knights can actually kind of almost create their own reality. So it's possible for Storm Knights to take modern equipment into the living land. It's also possible that at some point that will start to decay and break down or not work. But at least the Storm Knights, because they're special, they may have an opportunity to utilize modern equipment, like fly aircraft across the living land. So we have minor world laws, law of decay, which I was talking about, you know, dead things rot away quickly, law of scars, law of variety, passions rule in the living land. Talking about travel, hazards, underground travel. I understand that there is kind of a hollow earth that was introduced late in the original Torg, and I do believe that this hollow earth kind of makes an appearance in the big campaign adventure, the God Box. All right, so now we're talking about the invaders. So here's the High Lord. Each of the cosms is led by a High Lord. So, talking about how the living land, what kind of relations they have with the other cosms. So there we've got Isle, that's a fantasy one. There's the Cyber Papacy, or Papacy, I guess we'll say, which is kind of like a cyberpunkish, weird kind of like 1984-ish, pseudo-religious. It's actually pretty cool, but I could see where some people would take offense to that. We got the Nile Empire, which I talked about before. Aurora, or however it's pronounced, that's the horror one. Pan Pacifica is an Asian setting, and it's kind of like zombies, and this is another one that's kind of cyberpunky. Tharkhold is the one that with the demons, and those are in Russia. Talking about policies, religion, clan politics, Storm Knights, Stele. That's how the various different invaders are able to kind of spread their taint. The reality is through these stelae. And there's the core rules talk about that quite a bit. So we get a brief history of the Adinos, the Adino people, clans and tribes. There are various different clans. As I mentioned, some of the clans aren't necessarily allied with the High Lord. They may not necessarily be allied with humans either. But then we've got there's basically two religions. One is Linala, who is really like the main religion, the main goddess, I guess we would say. But then there's others as well. Thrakmos and Rex Stalik. All right, so Delphi Council. Talking about how the Delphi Council actually goes. Looks like we got reconnaissance, refugees, and resistance fighters. The Delphi Council in North America. Oh, this guy looks like, what is that? The Joker, or not the Joker, the Riddler? What? Just looks kind of odd. I'm in camo, and let me put this this bowler on. I was talking about some of the important NPCs. This is for the Delphi Council in North America. Now, the Delphi Council isn't necessarily all good. They haven't really discussed it too much, but it's kind of odd. Granted, they are, you know, the Delphi Council is this like worldwide organization that's been created to try to defeat these invaders. But there's some shakiness there too. Okay, so we got resources, transportation, information, communication, survival, bases, Alcatraz, Fort Knox, Houston, Miami. Talking about safe houses, current operations that are going on in the living land. So then now we've got some, it looks like we're going to have some adventure seeds here. Themes and tropes. Why Lost Worlds? Pulp Powers and Weird Science. Using Lost Worlds. Lost Worlds Generator. That's pretty wild. Pretty creepy. Adventure ideas. Here we go. An adventure generator. I am not a huge fan of just, you know, randomly generated adventures, even though it's funny. I talk about old school stuff, and old school stuff has a lot of charts, a lot of tables. I don't necessarily use those tables. Sometimes I would use tables for inspiration, but very rarely would it be like, oh, well, what's our adventure going to be tonight? Oh, it's that, eh? So, okay, so quite a few different little kind of story nuggets, little adventure nuggets there. Now, looks like we got a bit of a bestiary. The Ghost Bog are these, they're actually humans who are like implanted with this seed. They're almost like zombies. They're almost kind of like undead, but not undead. And this is something that actually all of the Cosms utilize, all of the invaders. So, but you have different plantings, which is kind of weird. So as you can see here in this image, I'll kind of try to get rid of some of that glare here. You've got like different variations. Like you've got this big guy back here. He's going to be the 5th planting. So yes, it's kind of bizarre. It's like they're, you know, they plant these bodies with these seeds and then they like harvest them, and there's some weird stuff going on up in Canada as far as the living land as well. There's an area that that has been invaded and taken over there. I'm not going to ruin any surprises though. So we've got wow, undead dinosaurs. Okay, and then we've got some example Edinos. All right. Eternity shards and lost treasures. Okay, so like these eternity shards are things that you can. It's basically like important historical items, important spiritual items, things like that from locations that can help actually fight back the reality altering cosms. For an example, like Washington D.C. has so many different things, like in the Smithsonian, that, or I should say, not just the Smithsonian. That's a bunch of different museums. I shouldn't say it's just like a museum, but so that's how it kind of keeps their reality from taking over. So talking about like the Liberty Bell, Feather Shield, Forever Totem, got Lost Treasures, and then we've got an index. So all in all, we've got 144 pages to the Living Land source book. And got quite a lot of credits here. So the writing and design, contributors, artists. Okay, so that is the source book. Next, let's take a look at the Delphi Missions, which this looks like this probably isn't more than 100 pages, if even that. Okay, so grab another quick sip here. The Delphi Council needs you. Delphi Missions, The Living Land, is part of a series of adventures designed to enhance any Torg Eternity campaign. Each of the 11 adventures inside is suitable for an evening of play and may be dropped into an existing story or played on its own. These dangerous missions add opportunities and complications to these Storm Knights' lives. This product contains adventures for Alpha Clearance Storm Knights written by a host of returning Torg icons. I won't read through all of that. Inside, you're going to find 11 adventures, all set within different parts of the Living Land. Great for one-night fill-in or to extend an act that ends too early, with new foes to battle and allies to win. And of course, you need the core rulebook and the drama deck to be able to play these. All right, so this is... I have to say that I have kind of had a little bit of a... not necessarily a knock, it's kind of a critique with Torg Eternity to this point, and it was actually going to be alleviated by the God Box adventure book that was coming out. But my beef was kind of like, well, you know, everything is sort of every adventure is just sort of like a kind of a one-shot, one evening kind of thing. That there are a lot of gamers out there, a lot of game masters out there who are not comfortable creating an entire campaign. They need something to build on. They need something to actually even just inspire them. They don't necessarily need an entire big campaign book. But I thought, you know, the original Delphi mission book was, you know, it was okay. I mean, there were a couple of adventures in there. I thought, oh yeah, these are pretty good. And then there were a couple of adventures. It was like, wow, that's just like, seriously, I don't see that taking up more than a couple hours for people to play that. So anyway, just wanted to point that out, that even though we are just looking at a Delphi mission book here, that the God Box is, I don't know if it's available yet or if it's on the horizon, but that was part of the Kickstarter for The Living Land. And I have heard through the grapevine that it's pretty good. It's pretty cool. And it is like an entire campaign that is both in the Living Land and I believe as well as the kind of Hollow Earth too. All right, so we've got Operation Lagnape. I have no idea. Oh, actually, it's by Wendolyn Reichel. I interviewed Wendolyn at Origins. So, yeah, I actually interviewed... oh, gosh, now I can't remember. I've interviewed so many people from Ulisses North America. I gotta forget some of their names. Okay, so this is in Gulf of Mexico. Once again, this is an adventure book. If you're a player, I'm recommending that, you know, you swing by tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Because you don't want to, you know, I'm not reading through all this, but I see some spoilers popping up. Okay, so looks like this takes place on an oil rig. It's like you're trying to move the rig someplace. Maybe Adinos are taking over the rig, and you're going to move that rig. You know, a lot of people don't realize that oil rigs can be moved. They're not set in one spot. Escape from the Abyss. Okay, so this is in Georgia. What waits in the dark water below the surface? Crystal tunnel. More danger lurks beneath the waves than just the threat of drowning. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, Seattle Underground. So each of the adventures starts off with kind of a mission briefing where that's how the Storm Knights are introduced to the mission. A lot of times the mission briefing is pretty brief, basically saying, okay, well, hey, be here, we need you to do this. So it's not like, you know, Mission Impossible where it's like, oh, if you choose to accept this mission, It's basically, no, we need you to do this. Now get going. All right, so I guess there's a wonder there. There we go. All right, so as I was saying earlier, sometimes there's some artwork in the Torg books that to me just seems kind of flat. That's a prime example here. I mean, you know, and I'm not trying to knock Ulisses North America, because I think this stuff is pretty cool. I like their Torg Eternity. But I mean, this artwork, that's not inspiring me. It's not getting my juices flowing, because some guy who's supposed to be like one of their stock heroes, I guess, is sitting there around a campfire telling a story. Now, one thing I will point out, one of the ways that we're able to shake off the invaders, their reality altering aspect, is by actually storytelling and creating legends and, you know, making people remember. So I guess in a way, yeah, that's probably what's going on here, but still. Okay, so the Battle of Philadelphia. There we go. Okay. As I mentioned, Philadelphia is kind of a like a safe zone, kind of a zone that the living land has not actually encroached into and taken over. Although it looks like that's kind of the plan, what they're trying to do here, I guess. It's my guess. As you can see, these adventures are really, really short. They're only a few pages. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to have 30 pages for an adventure, but these are just, you know, little drop-ins. These are little one-shots. You're not going to, like, string these all together for a campaign by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so we've got Finding Champ. Is Champ a dinosaur, a cryptid, or something else entirely? Don't know. We'll have to find out. So yeah, see, pretty short. Changing Storm. So, location, a small airport not far from the Montana-Idaho border. Which I actually traveled quite a lot when I was delivering RVs around the country, when I would be heading up to Seattle or Spokane. Deeper Impact. This one is in Mexico. Yep, looks like there's a step pyramid involved in this. Dread Zeppelin. Earth's Dinosaur. Oh, the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, Illinois. Nice. Okay, so I'll have to admit, when I find like an adventure or something that's supposed to be like based someplace I know, like for an example, like Chicago, this is supposed to be taking place at the Field Museum. Trust me, I will be nitpicking this. So, all right. You're like, hey, wait a second, no, that's not where the planetarium's located. Going upriver. Okay, so this is in Louisiana. It looks like we've got like a Nile Empire image in here. Or then again, maybe that's a pulp hero. Because one of the things too is you can have these various different storm knights, and that kind of fit into particular cosms. But because they're storm knights, they can travel and they can go through various different cosms. So that's one of the kind of gonzo aspects of Torg Eternity, is you can have characters who are like, vampire. One character's like a vampire hunter, and the other character is kind of like the Shadow, and another character is like a lizard person, one of the Adinos. So that's one of the cool things, where it's sort of like you've got all these kind of different realities you can draw from. Not every Storm Knight is necessarily going to be just a human who has been kind of altered by this reality energy, this possibility energy. So, kind of cool. All right, so looks like this is kind of a longer adventure here to finish it up. Yeah, that is a bit longer. And then we get some stat blocks here. Let's see. Yeah, that this looks like this is the longest one. First walk. It takes place in Oregon. Cool. And this is 80 pages. Like I said, I didn't think that was going to be 100 pages. And of course, once again, we got our little... I always like this. I always think that's kind of cool. We've got our bookmark here. That's cool. And then finally, we are going to take a look at the GM screen. So this will be pretty quick. Okay, so here's a secret. I don't use Game Master screens. I never have. I think I had a Dungeons and Dragons GM screen back in the day because I remember that artwork. I remember that iconic artwork. That the part of it is from, I want to say, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook. But outside of that, I don't use Game Master screens. I actually take my I always have a second chair next to me at the table, and I have it kind of pushed under the table, so I'll have notes and stuff. And I roll my dice in like a box top down there. But no, I've never, although this screen looks pretty cool, because this screen isn't really super high. That's what I'm not a big fan of, is like, I don't want to be like, no, because I've never been a game master whose attitude is like, I don't run like confrontational games or anything like that. Even though, of course, you know, Call of Cthulhu is, you don't have a confrontational or adversarial game master. It's just bad things happen in Call of Cthulhu. But yeah, I was never one for having a game screen. Although, to be honest, you know, it's pretty cool when you've got all your a lot of your tables and that you're going to need to utilize right in front of you. So we've got some of the difficulty modifiers, success levels, climbing difficulty, leaping distance, reconnection chart, because of the different realities, it's possible that your Storm Knight will actually disconnect from reality and actually start being taken over by the cosm that they're in. Mission goal, mission complications, mission setting, Lost World. So a lot of this stuff right here, as you can see, is focused on Living Land. So especially here we got the Lost Worlds, mission opposition, mission complications, mission goals. So these are all really kind of tied into Living Land. And of course, this is a Living Land Game Master's screen, so yes, I would think that would do it. So here on the other side, it's kind of cool. So we see the law of savagery. So it's talking about, these are one of the minor laws of the cosm, the law of life. It's kind of cool, showing the different ghost bogs. I think that's how it's pronounced. But then it's also showing here, these are the axioms, right? Remember, we were looking at the axioms: magic 1, social 7, spirit 24, tech 6. It's supposed to be like a postcard. And then got a bit of artwork here. Now, also inside, it looks like we've got some pre-generated characters. I wonder if we've got like a little adventure, because a lot of times that's what we'll see. Looks like some of these pre-gens, I did see this artwork. I want to say that was in the source book. The nun with the rifle and the eye patch. Okay, so we got some... they are actually... These are new, kind of like archetypes. Udino's Brute, Primitive Warrior. So it's kind of giving you an idea of the different archetypes that you could possibly have. the embedded journalist, the cartel assassin, the banished scout, chosen human. Looks like she's transforming. Looks like scales and that. Of course, claws right there. Dinosaur whisperer. Blood witch. Huh, cool. Very cool. So these are new character types. Sweet. Pretty sweet. But of course, to get your hands on those, you got to hit the Game Master screen, because those were not in the source book. All right, so we've got the Game Master screen. We've got the Delphi Missions book, and we also have the core source book for The Living Land. And those are 3 of the new releases from Ulisses North America for Torg Eternity. As I mentioned, I believe that these are starting to pop out to the Kickstarter backers. I do not, at this moment, actually have MSRPs of these 3 products yet. It's possible I just missed it somehow, but I do believe that you can go over to Ulisses North America's website, ulysses-us.com, and still purchase, like, last minute, like a pledge manager, like a whole packet, or package, I should say, of the various pledge levels from the Kickstarter. But I do not have the MSRPs of these individually. What I will do, though, is when that information becomes available, I will make note of it in the show notes down below. So once I've got that information, hopefully I get a chance to also see the God Box, because that looks pretty cool. And there's some other stuff too. I think there's a new, not to say that I'm going to get a chance to take a peek at these, but I believe there's a new drama deck as well that's available for the Living Lands. There's, or I should say Living Land. I always want to say it's plural, but it's Living Land, singular. But there's also the God Box, which is the campaign adventure, the big, like, interconnected adventure with all the different missions. And there's the drama deck. I think there's new tokens, which, where do I have them floating around? Oh well, sorry. I thought I had tokens right behind me, but I guess not. They're almost like chips. They're like almost like Benny chips, right? For Torg Eternity, because each of the players get they're not bennies. Off the top of my head now, I can't remember what they're called, but you can use these tokens to reroll, or to you know, to help you out, stuff like that. So there are still some other Living Land items that are out there that I am not showing off tonight. All right, so that is it for today's show, or I should say tonight's show. As I like to mention, if you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. Well, by now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be unboxing and taking a first look at Shadow Rift. try to get the light not to be blocking this out, or getting a bunch of glare from that. Anyway, I will be taking a look at Shadow Rift tomorrow, which is a fantasy deck building game. As always, if you like the channel, please subscribe. If you like the video, give it a quick thumbs up. Anyway, I will be back tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.